Hi everyone. It's such a beautiful day here. I'm really happy to be outside and to share this with you. You can see the sky is so blue and the garden is so green, and it's Mother Nature. And it's actually makes a lot of sense, very apropos, that we would be speaking about caring for the sacred feminine body. We have the sacred feminine body that is Mother Nature, that is the body at large, which is actually a feminine thing. I'll explain why in a moment. And we have the feminine nature, which is not relegated merely to the physical. So welcome everyone coming on. Really happy you're joining me. Hopefully you can hear some of the sounds of all the little beings in the garden. Lots of little beings. And of course water, which is also intensely feminine, or innately feminine, I should say. We have the yin and the yang, so we can't really begin this conversation without establishing that, in our life experience, we have these expressions of the yin and the yang, and the yin being the divine feminine and the yang being the divine masculine. And almost everything I say in this session is going to be strongly applicable to the divine masculine as well. But there will be things that we'll focus on that will be specifically female feminine issues. However, men have women who they love in their lives, so it can only be of help to tune in, whether you're a man or a woman. The divine feminine is significant, and the divine masculine has a divine feminine within, and the divine feminine has divine masculine within. And when we write the one, we help to inspire the writing of the other. So, yeah, thank you. All right, so one of the things I want to start out with, just as a sort of underlying fundamental. And I'm really happy for anyone sending questions as well as we go. It's also fine. But we're talking a lot about the matrix and about programs, and people often ask, well, how do you cure these programs? How do you cancel out these programs that we have, these conditionings, these codes, these false light codes? There's one really powerful way to do it, and that is with the frequency of truth. The frequency of truth dispels the spells. So if you have had a spell cast on you, which is what these false codings are, you can dispel it with the light codes, with truth. Literally, the frequency of truth resounds through you. It becomes abundantly clear what is real, what is not real, and those false codes, they go away. So as we proceed with whatever it is we're going to cover now, I've got lots of ideas and directions I want to take this in, but we'll see how it evolves. Keep that at heart. The frequency of truth cures programming. The frequency of truth deprograms false codes. Okay, and the majority, 99.9% of the way the feminine operates in the matrix is not in a way that is sacred, not in a way that honors the divine nature of the feminine, but instead in a way that desecrates, that diminishes, that harms, that degenerates, that corrupts, that inverts and perverts the divine feminine. And one of the key ways that this is done is through products. I brought a handful of products out because I wanted to remember to share certain things with you, and I'll show you some of them. But I've come so far away from that over the last 20 years, away from those products, that I don't even think about them anymore. It's kind of like when I go into a grocery store, which I hardly ever do. It's like it's such a rarity. I don't even know if I've been in a grocery store in the last 2 months. And even before that, there's co-ops, there's health shops and different things, but like a regular grocery store. And when you're not in that environment, you go back into it and you're like, oh my gosh, do people still consume that? That's not in a judgmental way, but like, oh wow, I forgot about that. Kind of like I do with masks sometimes. If I haven't been out in the world for a couple of days, I go back outside and I see all the people with their masks on. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a thing. that's actually a thing. I forgot, and like, oh dear, you know, and you know, so I've been away from all these for so long that they just aren't part of my repertoire, and I think I fail to communicate sometimes how devastating they are to the body, because I have them out of my mind. They're not in my consciousness. They're somewhere in a memory bank, and rarely, unless I'm speaking with a client or some sort of health issue comes up and it occurs to me that they're probably using one of these horrific products, or they have been over the long term, I'm reminded to bring them up. So products are a major way that this insult to the divine feminine occurs. And remember that the matrix is always trying to weaken us. And what I'm hoping to accomplish, my only mission, aim, goal, purpose in all of this, is to help make you strong. So my MO is to make you strong so that you can be sovereign, so that you can pluck yourself up and out of the matrix. You know, I can give you a little bit of a hand, but ultimately you're going to have to come to awareness of this construct and how it has trapped you with all these false codes, these false programs, and false ways of, or I'd say harmful ways, destructive ways of thinking about your divine feminine being, harmful ways of caring may be the wrong word, because caring would imply that you're actually doing some good, harmful ways of putting products on, of clothing that you wear, of ways that you feel you need to be seen, of ways you feel you need to engage, of things you think you need to consume, all of this. So, you know, I'll show you, I'll light these places up, and I'll show you the connection to the matrix, and because we can link each and every one of these things back to one thing, which is it will make you weaker. And if it's making you weaker, it's coming from the matrix. It's not coming from the network of life. Okay, that which occurs in the garden, other than, you know, artificial and sort of influence on the garden. Let's say an untouched wild garden. Everything is going to thrive. It's going to convert into greater forms of life. It's going to evolve, as opposed to involve or devolve. And remember, the matrix is always inverting. So the inverse of evolution, of consciousness expanding, is consciousness involuting, consciousness collapsing into itself. So the other thing that we have that works against us, works against the sacred feminine, and again, this is also applicable to the sacred male and the sacred masculine, is trauma. And specifically, we can think about what female trauma is. It's the exploitation and objectification of female energy, of feminine energy. And whenever, and this happens from the beginning. In fact, in the eating disorder live from the day before yesterday, I think it was, I actually wanted to bring this up because it's really important. And you know, there are always things going to slip through, because you know it's a lot to do in one video. But this most women who have dealt with textbook eating disorders, let's say, but again, I did explain that everyone's pretty much eating in a disordered way. But the textbook eating disorders, anorexia and bulimia, overeating, compulsive eating in any kind of way, almost always, I'm not going to say always, but almost always has some kind of connection, link, origin with sexual trauma. And unfortunately, we know that the statistics say that something like 1 out of every 3 young women has to contend with a kind of sexually traumatic, sexually abusive event in her, I think, like the first 30 years or something. Maybe it's the first 18 years. I don't know. You'll have to check me on that. But it is 1 out of 3. And I'd say it's at least that, from you know, my conversations, my experiences, and you know, what I've come across over the years. So that trauma, that exploitation, objectification, usury of the female energy is another way that we're weakened, exploited, and desecrated. And that's not news to anyone. But I think it's how we deal with it that will either serve our healing, our growth, our restoration, or will, by contrast, just keep us stuck. And I firmly, firmly believe that if the sacred feminine is restored to women, that they will have this beautiful knock-on effect to inspire the sacred masculine to come back online. And it's something I'm very, excited to see happen. It has to happen. Our men need us. We need our men, and our men need us. And both, unfortunately, the feminine and the masculine are mostly operating very dysfunctionally. So, we can help each other heal by healing ourselves. When we determine what makes and keeps us sacred and live by that, and we hold those boundaries firmly, and we learn how to assert ourselves in life-generating ways, and hold our boundaries, and to integrate the divine masculine qualities into our own being, and not just defer that always out to the men, but without defeminizing ourselves. It's not that hard to do. It takes a certain kind of precision and a certain know-how. And I hope to inspire that along the way. But I firmly believe that, and I know that that's what has to happen. I believe a great healing can occur on the most rapid scale, mass rapid scale, if one of the genders can step up. I mean, ideally both, right? But if at least one of them can step up and say, you know what, I see where this is all dysfunctional, and we get to it. And the feminist movement isn't it, I'm sorry to say. It just prolongs the lack of the sacred feminine. And it's the feminist movement as it is. It's working out of the matrix. So it's trying to make something work. Obviously, the dysfunctional patriarchy isn't what we want. But the answer to that, I don't think, is what we would define as the feminist movement. I think it's like banging the feminine being against a wall. It's not actually allowing her to be in all her glory. It's redefining her with aspects of the dysfunctional male in order to be able to operate on an equal footing. But who wants to be on that footing? Who wants to be on equal footing with a dysfunctional male? We want the male to be functional. We want the feminine to be functional, the masculine and the feminine to be functional, and to support each other like two legs on a body. It's like we're all in wheelchairs and in crutches. Let's get these legs working. Let's not spite the other. Let's have the kind of boundaries and the kind of sense of worth and value for ourselves, that we don't allow this kind of exploitation, and that those around us. I mean, why do we accept things that devalue ourselves? Because we're given the indication to do that. We don't come up with that on our own. From 0 to 6 or 0 to 7 years old, we are being programmed with what to accept, what our preferences are, what is normal, and so this is handed down to us by parents, by communities, by television, by music, and it's no surprise if we look around. It's not even worth beating around the bush about the feminine has been absolutely desecrated, completely, and the feminism movement, I believe, doesn't help, because if this is where it leads, if it leads to our own sense of allowing, or our own giving away permission to have the feminine body displayed and and objectified the way it is in the music videos, in movies, and pornography, and all this, the fact that it even is allowed to exist. I mean, not in the sense that we want to shut down censorship, that we want to remove freedoms. Like there's functional. I don't want to. This is going to may come out wrong, so forgive me. Allow me a little bit of some space to explain. There has to be protection without a kind of censorship that removes freedoms. But what kind of freedom does a little girl have when no one protects her from these images that get programmed into her, so that she winds up accepting things that devalue her for the rest of her life and then pass it on to her children. So if we had wisdom in place, we wouldn't need to put strict censorship that would force kind of a lack of freedom, if that makes sense. Anyway, I don't know if that came out very well, but the female trauma is major, major, major. It's exploitation, it's objectification, and it's specifically exploiting our love, our effort, and our beauty. And that's what it all comes down to. So any ideology, person, entity, movie, music, anything that would diminish the value of love, beauty, and exertion, effort, energy of the divine feminine is a desecration of that force, of that energy. And unfortunately, that's what we see everywhere. We see absolute usury, and we see it in terms of the planet. So we see that the earth, the Mother Earth, the divine feminine as expressed as our planet, we see her completely exploited for, make no mistake, that which springs from her soil is her love, is her compassion, is her beauty, is her effort. So if we're exploiting that, which of course we are, not only exploiting it, but we're suppressing it, we're suppressing all of her truth, as above, so below. We're doing it in the body, and the body is feminine. Anything that is, the earth, the body is yin. So, the yang is expressive. It's radiant. It has different forces. It's like the sun. So it's different. But the point is that we're what we do to the earth, we're doing to ourselves. And this idea that, let's just take what we want for the earth and it won't affect us. Same thing with the animals. So when we exploit an animal's body, and we take its life, we take its children's lives, we will treat its mammary glands in a absolute vile way, and raise the animals in conditions that are just evil. It's just evil. So when I was talking about the forces of goodness, I think that was a few days ago, I didn't talk about the fact that we didn't get to this, unfortunately. I'm sorry I didn't, because I really wanted to underscore the fact that you can't be working with the forces of goodness and be killing animals for food. It's incongruent. So this idea that being nice and being good or being polite, that's not working with the forces of goodness. You can be polite, you can be nice, and you can behave yourself, but you can also, it's also the forces of goodness are not they're not meek, they're not gentle, they are it's a very fierce force. It's a force of protection. It's a force of sustaining life. So whenever we do things that would harm life, or suppress life, and in any way harm life, exploit it, suppress it, destroy it, on any scale, we are working against the divine, the sacred feminine. So we have to be very clear that what we do to the earth is going to show up in our bodies, and ultimately it's going to ruin our lives. So and feel free, you guys, to send in some questions. I'm just going to kind of talk about a few things I think are important, and as I go, I'm happy to take questions. So we have the products, we have the female trauma, which is this exposure to everything. And I wanted to mention with the eating disorders, when we talk about sexual trauma, it doesn't just have to be trauma that is done to you one-on-one by another person. It can come from, and it does come from, these images, from the music videos, from the stuff on, it's on all our forms of media. Anything that is going to sexually objectify the female body is a form of sexual trauma on a person. And but again, we're not taught that this is wrong. We're taught that this is normal. We're taught that this is sexy is good, and the sexier the better. And here are all these images from Victoria's Secret's catalog to everything. You can go on Instagram, you can go on the TV, you can go on through the magazines. every media format is rife with the sexual objectification of the female, and the engagements that we're programmed to believe are normal, like having multiple sexual partners, like starting young, like exploring with lots of different things, like exploring with different genders, like you got to start to wonder. Take it back to the matrix. Does it make you weaker? Does it make you confused? If it makes you weaker and if it makes you confused, it's coming from the matrix. It's not coming from the network of life, because the network of life isn't confused. The network of life does not have that kind of chaos about it. It's very explorative. It's very expressive. It knows itself intensively, and in terms of being productive and creative, and filled with the life force, which is basically the physical sexual power is just that which is expressed physically, but the orgasm, the orgone, as Wilhelm Reich refers to it, is the life force. So ultimately, we're desecrating and making desecrating the life force when we encourage kind of sexual engagements that aren't divine, are not in harmony with life. And that chaos and that confusion that is bred from all of that is purely designed to make people weaker. And if we can't see that, then it's going to be really hard to see why you don't want to use the products, and why you don't want to wear those clothes, and why you don't want to restrict and constrict and suppress yourself, because you're not going to have the motivation. If you really understand that you're being used and that you're being made to be weaker through these things, then you won't want to go anywhere near them. You'll be over them, and you'll want to take a different path. And the different path you take will actually give you the real feminine qualities, as opposed to the false feminine qualities that just make you cover yourself up. The heavy makeup, the injections, the Botox, the bleaches on the teeth, the stuff you would take in. Maybe it's the diet products or the pills, or all of it. Everything that tells you, will take this or wear this or inject this, and you will fit this sexy mold even more. That's what you need to run from. And instead, when you get it right and you sync up with nature, and sometimes it takes a little bit of a transition. It's not about just the next day letting yourself, be a mess. It's doesn't need to be one or the other. It's a transition away from it. But you have to have that epiphany, and once you have the epiphany, you have to hold on to it, because the second you let it go, you'll see an ad, or you'll hear something, or you'll watch something that will possibly bring you right back into it and make you question yourself, or make you feel you need to cover something over and everything. So it's something we really have to get a handle on. And honestly, I don't think there's any bigger purpose I could be serving right now than to remind women of how they're manipulated that way. Because again, if we can fix the divine sacred feminine, we can inspire the men, we can inspire the divine masculine to step up. And once that happens, we've restored the family. Because as long as we have a dysfunctional feminine or a dysfunctional masculine coming together in relationship, we have offspring from that, then it's another generation that's going to be bearing the burden of the false codings and perpetuating the whole thing. So we can very quickly fix this if we can just see the false coding, see where the matrix wants to make us weak, see all the products and all the trauma and all the messaging that is so harmful to us, and walk away from it. It's bold, but if we have the understanding and we have direction, we can do it. We have each other, and we can help each other. And one of the dreams I always had was that we wouldn't be focused on making ourselves beautiful. We'd be focused on, think about with your children or your nieces, young women in your life. that you may have, how fun it is to adorn them, to braid their hair, to get them dressed, to, just, simple things. Doesn't take much, just, being clean, well-dressed, and do their hair or something. And that we would be looking for ways to make each other more beautiful. And that may be a little idealistic, but I love the idea of that. Because one of the biggest problems with the world, and that one of the Matrix biggest directives is to make us self-focused. And when you become self-focused, you lose the focus, the unity. And we're never going to be able to, we'll never actually be happy when we're focused on the self. And we'll never really understand life if we're focused on the self, because the network of life is interconnected. It's not self-focused. The tree isn't worried about itself. Yes, it's going to seek the sun and stuff, but it's doing, so much more than that. It's giving us oxygen. It's the same thing with, take anything, a flower, an herb. It's all about it being its unique expression, but giving, and it's not self-focused. So, I look forward to the day when we can take such pleasure and joy in doing it for making each other beautiful. Okay, let me see. I think I may be missing a few things here. Okay. Oh, thank you, Carrie Ann. It's interesting that, hi, Carly. That's right. It's interesting that you say starting young, but I always think it's suppressing to women to imply that when women's bodies are able to birth and nurture children from a young age, it seems our society tells women that it's wrong, and young girls end up on birth control, manipulating their hormones and ultimately their divine nature. Okay, well, that I'm not suggesting that women should necessarily be giving birth very young, just because they maybe I'm misunderstanding this. Okay, so there's a lot going on there. Let me see if I can get to you. So first of all, I do believe that we should be able to use different plants for different things to occur. And this is kind of an unusual thing to say, but maybe that there would be plants to take to prevent pregnancy, that there would be plants for encouraging it, that there would be plants to, if the time isn't right, to, see that things aren't fulfilled. So I think there's a whole world that in desecrating the sacred feminine, we have lost touch with. That's right. The whole idea is that we restore connection by restoring. When we restore ourselves, we're restoring connection in our whole body, and not just in the body, but in the being, let's say, such that we have enough functional emotions, such that we have our psyche is connected to the spirit world, and all of these threads are put back together. When this happens, I believe we're able to read nature, we're able to communicate with nature, and as above, so below, nature would come back as well, because all this suppression and obstruction, layering concrete across the planet, that's just shut everything down. We apparently we kill off 200 species of insects, plants, animals, microbes every day in this technocratic world that we're living in. So that's per day. So you can imagine if we stopped doing that, how things would start to come back, and we would have access to different things that would enable us to just be more in sync with life, let's say. And it's not necessarily that in bringing things back into balance that at this stage that we would want girls to have children at younger ages, but things like birth control wouldn't be on the table, because we wouldn't be manipulating the sacred hormones, which is one of the major things that desecrates the divine feminine. The manipulation of our sacred hormones is it just wreaks havoc all over the body. It makes you so weak. It takes away your vitality, completely imbalancing. So yes, it's true that our society does encourage. See, what it does is it encourages sexuality prematurely, and then says, but don't worry, we have a solution for that. It's that problem reaction solution thing that David Icke talks about. And it's just another area of it. It's like, let's encourage you to do something that's antithetical to nature so that we can give you something that will allow you to continue to do it and make you even weaker as you do it. If that makes sense. So, sacred feminine sexuality would be, I mean, it would be so protected. It wouldn't be on the table to be needing birth control. There would be, it wouldn't happen until the time was right, until the pair was made, and it wouldn't be like it is now. It's in this chaos of exploring, sex through, like I said, multiple partners at a very young age in haphazard situations with alcohol and drugs and pressure and popularity and all of this. That comes from a desperation to fit in, and not the soul's desire to engage with another soul in a way that honors that other soul. So we have to get out of all of that, the whole way of thinking, and we have to raise our sons and our daughters that way, because it does no good just to set our daughters right. Our sons have to hold themselves sacred, not just, yes, obviously we want our sons, and I teach my son as often as I can get it in there, like just how important it is to not engage the way other kids his age may be engaging, to not see women the way women are perceived, to not fall for it, but at the same time, not just for the woman and for the girl, the young woman, but for him to have such a strong sense of the sacred within him, and that's why it's hard. It's, on the one hand, I want to speak about it just in the context of the feminine, but it's the same is true for both genders. Obviously, we need each other. We need each other to be restored, and we need to help each other however we can to do that. Okay, let's see. Hi, Fran. How would you suggest clearing out unresolved traumas in teenage girls who may have been subjected to sexual trauma? Oh boy. Okay, well, first of all, I didn't expect to talk too much about the resolution of sexual trauma today. And I don't want to tread lightly on that. When I do address it, I want to address it very seriously. And I wouldn't say that, on the one hand, I'm an expert in the sense that I've personally experienced it and had to heal myself from it. But, I'm not, it's not my area of expertise in a professional sense. So I'd like to think about creating a forum maybe specifically for that, but certainly to be heard, to be believed, to be seen, to recognize where the boundaries were broken, why they were broken, really to take the whole thing apart. It's so important, maybe multiple times. There's a lot there. Let me think about that one, because I don't want to do the injustice of kind of just throwing something out there, and it's big, and each person's different, each person's trauma is different, and sometimes the trauma comes from not being heard or not being believed, or it being kind of tossed to the side or overlooked. Can't tell you how many times that's come up in conversations with friends, with clients. Where they just wouldn't be taken as seriously as it needed to be in order for real healing to take place. That's a big one. Thank you for asking. I just, like I said, I don't want to do it the injustice by just throwing something out there right now. It's a big conversation. Okay, not that women should birth young, but there is. Oh wait, sorry. Did I do that one already? But there's very little support for young mothers when it's a natural process. The only answer is birth control. Okay, that's true. But I would say we need to get to the before. Like, young mothers. Yes, young mothers should be supported hugely, and given, especially if they're brave enough to, to go ahead and have the baby and raise the baby. And it takes a huge amount of courage to do that, especially in this world where everything, can be taken care of, as it were. But then by the same token, I think a lot of young women who actually decide to terminate don't realize the toll it's going to take on their psyche, on their emotions. And of course, they need a huge amount of support as well. And I think our society really downplays that. So just generally speaking, girls need support. What they're getting is pressure, and what they're needing is support, and they're needing understanding, and they're needing the big sisters, the mamas, the grandmothers, the aunts, the grown women to step in and say enough. Like, this is not going to happen with you're not going to feel this pain and fear and insecurity and burden that that my generation felt, and we're going to stop it. We're not going to allow you to be inundated by this barrage of sexual images that to teach you to objectify yourself, and will only exploit that sense of objectification that you put on yourself, because someone will come along and be more than ready to take advantage of it, because you've already primed yourself for them to. You've in objectifying yourself, you've made yourself a commodity. So we've all been commoditized by how sexy we are. I mean, the whole thing is just so stupid. And we need to say that this is my attempt, in my way of saying, we have to stop this. Enough already. Enough. And not, yes, we're having a reasonably civilized conversation here. I'm sorry, it's so one way. I do look forward to more comments and questions. But it's not really coming from a place of order and of let's say, that's the wrong term. It's not coming from a place of let's be nice. Inside, there's a ferocity. There's an enough. It's not a gentle enough. It's a flippin' enough already. Really, really, really. Do not put an image in front of my daughter or my son that is going to cause them to devalue themselves or somebody else, ever. Can we just stop that now? That's what has to come forth. And it has to happen in such a way that the young men and the dads and the uncles and the grandfathers and the adult men want this too, that they want to bring an end to it as fiercely as the sacred feminine does, because they should, because they not only do they have daughters, but or if they don't, their sons or the next generation is going to be brought up by people who either think in terms of valuing our sacredness or devaluing our sacredness. And people, I think, also don't realize how powerful the ancestry is, and how the lineage, what's coming, what we do impacts these future generations, and what was done has impacted us. And then, unfortunately, we have to do the cleanup work, but there's no better time to do it. And it really is a huge opportunity right now. Everybody is looking for a new way, because the old way isn't going to work, and we can see how devastated we've all been by this old operating system. What I found interesting is the link between eating disorders and sexual trauma. Yes. Hold on a second. Sorry. See more? Yes. And in fact, a little earlier, I said that I was sorry that I forgot to mention that in the eating disorders conversation. It's huge. And it's not just for those who've had, sexual trauma person to person, but the images, the I keep repeating, the programs, the conditions, the codes, the basically the stories and the visuals and the sounds that are all laden with sexual innuendo. That's sexual trauma too. So the Netflix Cuties movie, for example, that everyone was up in arms about. I mean, that was just and different people have different perspectives on it, but it was just like, there have to be boundaries. Like, we cannot put images in front of our children and not think that they're learning from them. We're so receptive when we're little. Bruce Lipton, just to reiterate, he was the pioneer in this. He established that from 0 to 6 or 0 to 7 years old, we're in this hypnagogic state. we're just receiving everything. We're believing, taking, and absorbing everything that's around us. So, that's mostly theta waves, and then around 7 to 12, we move into beta, where we learn by rote really well. Like, we can learn a language really well. Obviously, when we're really little, we can as well, because of everything's so is being absorbed. But things like our multiplication tables and anything that you need to memorize comes really easily when you're in that beta stage. And then after 12, we move into alpha, and we begin to think critically, and we have the ability to think critically. Hopefully we do, but with the wrong programming, we basically live lives of all our thoughts are all just prejudiced, because we're just saying what we were told, what was programmed into us. We have no true thoughts of our own. If we're raised with that, which we all were, unfortunately. So we have to relearn everything. We have to deprogram. And remember, I want to just keep saying it again, the frequency of truth will get rid of the codes, will deprogram you. The frequency of truth will resound so strongly that the lies, the illusions, the falsities will so clearly be so obviously clearly wrong. And it's like, it would be like, I don't know, having this fake Picasso that your whole life you were told was real Picasso, and then the real Picasso comes in, and it's so much better. It's so clearly the real Picasso. I don't know if that's a good example, but when truth comes in with its magical frequency, it cancels out everything else. So we have to hear it, and that's what I aim to do for you guys, just to put it out there gently, but also with with the conviction that I carry with it. I appreciate that you guys are receptive, really do, because we can only do this together, and we can only stop it happening in the future if we can be brave enough to teach our kids to speak out about it, to not be bullied by all the noise. The noise is what our kids are mostly hearing. But then, this isn't just about our kids, this is about ourselves. So we can't do our kids any good unless we've healed ourselves, or are in the process of healing ourselves. And they can see that we're on a path away from something that was damaging towards something that is empowering. And again, this is all about sovereignty and power, real power, because the power that you've been under, that the collective has been under, has just been used against us. But it's trying to suppress our true power, which is what it's so afraid of. The matrix, the entity that wants to shut us down, only wants to shut us down because it knows how powerful we are if we're not shut down. So let's not be shut down. Let's remove that suppression. Let's take away all that stuff that was on top of us, whether we're putting it on our skin through these products that aren't good for us, whether we're putting it into our mind by watching the stuff that perpetuates the program, that refuels the programs. All of these things, we just need to stop engaging with it. I know that's hard, especially when you're living in a city and say you have a corporate job, or you're a teacher in a public school or a private school, or if most professionals are living and operating in an environment that doesn't make it easy, because whether you're on the highway or in groups or whatever you're doing, you're in that barrage. You're being barraged by all that stuff. But as long as you can see it, once you start to identify it and see it, it doesn't have the same power over you. You know what the fake is. You know which is the fake Picasso, which is the real Picasso. All right. So a lot of the things that, and then just to say about the sacred feminine and the desecration, the number one surgery for women is the cesarean section, and the second most common surgery today is the hysterectomy. And certainly there are times when, especially given how by weakening the body and having multiple generations of a degenerating body, physical form, we run into trouble, because even if we try to live perfectly in this lifetime, we're still undoing a lot of the damage that was done before. So there may still be reasons for emergency C-sections and, absolute need for a hysterectomy or something. But this shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't be happening. It's the desecration of the divine feminine that's caused these two surgeries to be the most common surgeries for women. And there's nothing normal about that. We have to be very clear on that. So the other one that's obviously extremely common, I'm not sure how it ranks, but is the mastectomy, double mastectomy, which we hear about celebrities getting all the time. And and we think about, well, why is the uterus, why are the mammary glands, why is the places that are so life-giving and nurturing being riddled with cancer? Well, again, it's as above, so below. So the desecration of the divine feminine, it inverts the ability to nurture. So, removing the mammary glands, it's symbolic of the inability to give that nurturing, and the removal of the ovaries and the uterus, and even the polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is so rife, and all of these growths in the ovaries, they're all symbolic again of our life-giving qualities, our life-giving sort of ability to be destroyed, taken away. I mean, and the world suffers for that. Of course, the world suffers for that because and then of course we've got the babies that it was so common to give formula from around the 1950s. It just became the in thing to do, and so it's one thing to require a cesarean section because you really are at the risk of losing a baby if you don't have it, sorry. But it's been in vogue for several decades now to schedule a cesarean because you want to know when your baby's coming, and you want to have, I don't know, some sort of, for whatever reason. But it dishonors nature. Again, it's not to say that there isn't a time and a place when they're needed. So please don't misunderstand me. And same thing with hysterectomy. But the commonness of it reveals just how disconnected women are with their body, and how they've come to devalue the workings of the feminine in the body. I can remember when I was getting married, when I was 21, and it was 1997, and I heard about this, I think it was like a special birth control pill that ensured that you wouldn't get your period. Like you actually wouldn't get your period. And I thought, wow, what a cool idea, because then you wouldn't have to have your period, and you wouldn't have to worry about what if you get it when you're on honeymoon, or, I mean, I actually had that thought. So, and I remember when I was struggling with my weight before I got into cleansing and stuff, I used to think, maybe one day there'll just be a pill. Maybe there'll just be something. And of course I would always look for these pills, and sometimes I would take them and I'd have terrible reactions to them. But I always thought, well, we're progressing so much in life, and there's going to be something. So eventually there'll just be something, so I won't have to worry about it. That's how out of touch I was with my own body. It was like I was a head on top of a body that I didn't understand, had no knowledge of, had no connection with, had no affinity for, and most importantly, it wasn't my friend, because I was fighting my body all the time. And the matrix puts us at odds with nature, puts us at odds with nature that is our body. So then what happens when we are so separated from our body? We're so disconnected from the divine, from the sacred feminine? Well, two of them, there's so many. I mean, if I think about what comes through every day in terms of ailments, symptoms, diseases, diagnoses, is countless. But one of the biggest ones that comes through is the hair loss issue. Female pattern baldness and hair loss with women, just hair coming out in clumps. And remember, this is all going back, if you can just keep a bead on the fact that, think matrix wants to weaken you. Network of life empowers you. I want you to be strong. I want you to have your power back. Well, what does the hair represent? What does the hair symbolize? Hair is power. Think about Samson in the Bible. It's hair. Hair is so symbolic, and not just symbolic. It is an expression of one's life force. So when I hear about women globally losing their hair the way they're losing it, there could be no better, sadder. There could be no sadder, but no clearer, more decisive indication that our power is diminishing in, across the board in huge amounts, and that and let's say not only how power is diminishing, that the word is weak, that is indicative of our weakness. And I noticed, and I've said before, the last couple of years have been the most traumatic years of my entire life, and that's saying a lot because I've been through a whole lot in my life. I noticed about a year ago, after having, I suppose, let's just say like the shock, intense shock, that isn't completely, hasn't completely left my life yet, but I'm on the right side of it, let's say. But I noticed that the quality of my hair changed significantly, and that really freaked me out because, I've always been the one saying, well, if your life force is strong, your hair will be great, and let's work on the intestine. Let's work on make sure that everything else is working so that the body has enough life force so that it can. I describe it as the flowers or the leaves on the tree. You've got to have your root system working, everything. Well, my life force was being so drained by this life trauma that I was in, that all the green juice and everything in the world, I was in so much emotional pain, and the body never lies, right? We have to remember the body never lies. So I could see that this was not good. I wasn't losing hair, but I was just feeling like my hair didn't have my hair's always been great, and it's just, I didn't like the fact that I could see that something was happening. And anyway, long story short, in the last, say, 6 to 9 months, as I've come back into my strength, I had the time to process the grief, the intense grief that I was faced with. I noticed little by little, and now my hair is back to the way it was, 10 years ago. But this is why we have to watch our bodies. We have to watch, the body's constantly trying to communicate with us. And it does this through symptoms. So if we're not paying attention to symptoms because we're like a head and shoulder on top of a body that we have no connection with, we won't understand how to read those symptoms. We'll just keep on suppressing them and covering them up, when what that will do is it'll just, make it worse and elongate the problem. So, I realized how important it was for me to really focus on, not that I wasn't anyway, but I had to get over the grief. I had to get over the pain. I was gonna disintegrate if I didn't. And what's that great saying? Necessity is the mother of invention. And there are things in our life that we're good at dealing with, and then there are things that will happen out of the blue that we're not used to, and then we have to figure out how we're going to get through that. And I'm sure most of you who are listening, watching, have had something like that in your life. We don't get through life without major things happening, at least, once we get into several decades and beyond, because that's how we grow, and that's what we're here for. We're here for our soul to grow. So we get thrown things, and it's like, oh my gosh, I've dealt with a lot of things, but I haven't dealt with this. How am I going to get through this? And we either figure it out and we find our way through, or the disintegration just takes us down. And that's another conversation for another day. So how do we deal with grief and trauma and all of this? And that's big. And I'm really grateful that I will be able to share that with you, because I've gotten through it. And then the restoration happens, and then you actually come back way better than before. In many ways, it's like physical training. When you strength train, when you're sore the next day, it's because there's this microscopic tearing and repair work that's going on, And when the microscopic tears from the workout have the time to repair with these microscopic little scars, is the way my sensei describes it, that creates a stronger tissue, and that's what's creating your muscular strength, and the integrity of that connection increases, and that's your strength. So that's what happens if we can flow with the grief and trauma in our lives and not let it disintegrate us, but enable it to break down what needs to be broken down and rebuild, because we provide for ourselves the kind of rest and environment to allow that to happen. And it can't always happen. So sometimes, a soldier in war or intense grief that isn't supported, this is why some people come out of it and other people don't. It takes having a support network, even if it's just one or two people in your life that love you and keep you alive. That's what happened with me. And it doesn't take more than one or two people, but but they need to be there, and we need each other. This is why this isolation, ironically, and the separation consciousness, and fending for oneself. Yes, there are times when we really do have to fend for ourselves, but we need each other, and we should be able to. We should be in a network of souls that enables us to grow through our traumas, as opposed to, I don't think we can necessarily grow without any trauma. Maybe we can. Maybe if we it's a different way of learning. I think in some ways we do. So let me not, I just sort of take that back. I do think that there are things that we can't really learn until we're faced with the reality of them. And it forces growth, enables growth in a way that nothing else does. That just taking somebody else's word for it and, not needing to have the personal experience does. But I digress. So the hair is the major one. It shows the weakness. Sorry, am I missing something here? Sorry, guys, I haven't. Okay. Oh, thanks, Katie. It's very sweet of you. The other one, of course, is the throat, the thyroid. And actually, should be checking the time, but I'll just keep going for now. Anyway, the thyroid is another big one, of course, and there we have the speaking of the truth. So I think it was when I talked about eating disorders. If we're suppressing our truth, if we're not able to say what we truly need to say, then we're actually contributing to the desecration of ourselves. So, combine the fact that deep down, even if we're programmed with all these false codes, we know they're wrong. Something in us knows. And this is, I believe, behind bulimia. We got into this a little bit the other day. But that knowing and not being able to express what's true, and knowing that something's wrong, but not knowing what the alternative is, what the truth is, only being given the options within the matrix, as it were, it shuts down something so critical in us. It shuts down our truth. Like, for example, it's the same as symptoms in the body. So if a symptom comes up in the body and we suppress it with a drug, some sort of medication that shuts down the symptom, but doesn't address the cause, the original cause, the core cause, then we're just silencing a symptom that's going to come up even stronger later. So same thing with our own suppression. We feel something inside of us, but we know we don't really maybe have the words for it because we're really little, and or so we cry and we express in other ways that are misunderstood, and it's just snowballs into this person that can't speak, can say hello, how are you, can I, what would you like for dinner, can I draw your bath, whatever, like the functional things in a day, but isn't able to actually say what needs to be said, or even say, I don't really know what needs to be said, but something needs to be said, because there's nobody really listening with ears for that. And that's why when we resecrate ourselves, is that even a term? It's not, I don't think it's a real word, but when we restore our sacredness, we become great listeners. All the things that are qualities of the divine feminine, of the sacred feminine, become so natural to us, that to be a source of comfort for others, to be an ear for others, to have time and space to hold and nurture others, to just to have absolute love, compassion, understanding, and it just to flow through us, because that's what the sacred feminine is. That's what we have naturally. If it's not shut down and it's not all twisted to make us, to turn us into sort of women of the world, let's say, which we don't want to be women of the world. We want to be, women of the network of life, but not women of the world, because the world is the matrix and life is the network of life. It's a very different thing. Then we just have it within us, and then if it's not being exploited because it's respected, then there's the ebb and flow. There's, I have this to give, I give this, I rest and restore. And that process of restoration and resting is encouraged, is an absolute. It's night and day. In the daytime, nature does its thing, and at night it rests and sleeps. In spring and summer, it's expressing. Fall and winter, it's calming down and going within. So that's that kind of balance. And then we have a consistent, steady stream of energy to give, this beautiful, loving energy. And when we're able to do that and give that, everything's lighting up around us. Everything that comes into our field is benefiting from that healing energy, and that just perpetuates, as opposed to the alternative that's all about suppression, objectification, exploitation, and then that winds up perpetuating. And sadly, you have children, grandchildren, granddaughters who are carrying the pain and suppression of their great grandmothers, because it was never rectified somewhere down the line. There wasn't a female figure that stepped in and said, actually, this isn't how we do the woman thing. Let me show you a different way. Let me show you a better way. And then the focus is not on ourselves, on how we need to make ourselves look, and how many boxes we need to tick. When really, we wind up not being able to tick any of the real boxes, because you can't, because you have no genuine compassion and love and care to give, because you've been so shut down. You're wondering, you're focused on your survival. That's what winds up happening. That's the dysfunctional female that's really just focused on her own survival, and will survive at all costs, and insulate herself in order to really just be plastic. It's that pretend world. And ironically, what are little girls given to play with? They're given a lot of plastic, a lot of, and today's world, it's not just these very animated, perfect. I mean, Barbie, of course, was perfect. Like they were perfect before, but they're even more fake-like now. They're frightening. Actually, they're frighteningly fake. It's that. Well, I won't say more on that, but. So what's going into the body, and let's also talk about the addictions and the acidity. So remember I said that the more acidic something is, the more addictive it is. And the more addictive it is, and the more acidic it is, the more inclined to create fungus and pathogens in the body it will be. And what do those pathogens do? Of course, they have you do their bidding, and they make you weaker, and they literally eat away at you. So your bones, tissues, your synapses in your brain, all these things just degrade, they disintegrate. So we have, on the one side, strength builds integrity and builds the connectivity of everything, and then the breaking down, doing things that cause disintegration, cause obviously the things to fall apart. So entropy, for example, is that disintegration, when things go from a state of a certain order to a lower order, into chaos. That's entropy. And then we have neg entropy or syntropy. I prefer syntropy to neg entropy, because neg is sort of a neg. And syntropy is brings everything to a higher order. So taking something from its state of chaos or a certain degree of order to a higher degree of order, a composition of greater intelligence. And that's what, so we wind up moving into entropy when we take in acidic substances, which become addictive and breed these pathogens. So this is why it's not just, we have to watch the acidity, because it's actually causing our disintegration. And, and anything that contributes to our disintegration is contributing to our weakness. So the next time you feel like you need to give in to something, either because it's an addiction, or because of social pressure, or because you think it's going to somehow make you look better, if it's acidic, it's going to cause disintegration. That's why I don't like these professional teeth whitening systems. It's, yes, it might make your teeth look whiter. I think that look, though, is kind of over, frankly, but maybe I'm just in my own alternate reality. But it's going to cause the integrity of the tooth to weaken, and that's the last thing you need. You want to be thinking not just of yourself today, but you want to be thinking of your 80-year-old self, or your 120-year-old self. Teeth are really important. They're so important, and they're little connections that run from the teeth to the brain, and from the teeth to the gut. Everything's connected. So if you break down the connection in one place, you're breaking down so many lines of connection, which is where the life force, which is where the intelligence flows. So the intelligence can't flow, then information isn't going to get where it needs to go, and you're going to be dumbed down. Remember, we want to bring know-how into the body and not be dumbed down. All right, so I actually brought my toothpaste and my toothbrush and my floss out because I wanted to, and my tongue scraper. You see, I've got like a whole system of caring for my teeth. Tongue scraper is essential. In fact, I use it multiple times a day. Even if you don't have time to brush your teeth again, during the day, you can just give a good tongue scrape. See, it's a metal tongue scraper. And I'm not going to do it in front of the screen. It may gross some of you out. But it's really important, because you start to realize how much moves through the organ of the tongue every day. So the gut it's moving things throughout, which is why, well, gosh, this is a whole tissue cleansing conversation. This can go in a million different directions. But basically, the waste matter permeates the lining and the tissue of the gut. That which gets stuck in the gut winds up going all over the body. But basically, how we care for our mouth is so important for our beauty and longevity. Who is it now? Dr. I'll think of it now. Okay, let me not waste time on memory lapses. Okay, so you want to scrape your tongue, get the gunk off your tongue several times a day. I like to use a what do you call it? A buzzing toothbrush, a vibrating toothbrush. What's it called? Anyway, because you can wear your gums down by pushing your toothbrush up. So I like to be able to with this just hold it in place and move it around and let it do the work. And I find that for gum recession, that's really important. What's it called? Anyway, I'm a big fan of dental floss. However, normal dental floss is really gross and toxic. In fact, I wouldn't even have known that except by accident. It was picked up for me like a normal one, and I couldn't believe how artificial it was. So your floss has to be get it from the natural food store, because regular floss is laden with chemicals. I don't know what they put in it to make it taste like peppermint, but it's definitely not essential oil of peppermint. It's synthetic something. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. So we've got those 4 things. Now, what do I do with my toothpaste? This is just a brand I get here locally. You can get any natural brand of toothpaste that you like. And then I like to add about 15 drops. You might start with 5 or 6. I kind of go hog wild with everything I do. I'm an extremist. But I do a bunch of drops of cinnamon oil, essential oil of cinnamon. And make sure it's cinnamon bark, not cinnamon leaf. So cinnamon bark. And then I put about 10 drops of food grade, 35% hydrogen peroxide into the toothpaste. So there's a little hole on top. I just let it drop in, and then I close the top, and then I just shake it really well. And then I'll turn it this way so that it'll all seep down, so that, because that way it would all stay at the top, and then the first 2 or 3 times you brush your teeth, your mouth will be on fire. So give it a good shake, and then hold it like this, and let it all kind of collate. And there you have a toothbrush. It's going to whiten. It's going to be natural. It's not going to give you fluoride to make you docile and lose brain cells. And you'll have the cinnamon oil, which is going to, I'll tell you about the cinnamon oil now. I speak about it all the time, but I'll tell you about it in a minute. And then the hydrogen peroxide, which will be great for tooth whitening and just killing pathogens in the mouth. And pretty much as often as I can, I'll do, a little toothbrushing, tongue scrape. I'll only floss at night because I only eat 1 meal a day, so I will floss after that meal. But, if the mouth is a perfect reflection of what goes on in the intestine, and if you think things rot in the mouth quickly, imagine that rot in the intestine. It's a really great way of understanding just how serious the intestinal buildup is and how much rot is inside the body. And that's why we want to move toward this concept of incorruptibility. That's what it's all about. So the inability to proliferate rot in the body. That's why we want high alkaline foods. The greener the better, because the greener, the less inclined toward rot. Remember, the gold is one of the incorruptible metals, or is an incorruptible metal, one of 9 metals. One of 9 noble metals. Now I'm trying to go too fast because I want to get too much in before I have to leave. Gold, one of the 9 noble metals, it's incorruptible by nature, and like the sun, is also incorruptible. And the sun is what creates the chlorophyll that makes our greens that we want to have a high content of. So that's why the greens are the least inclined to create and proliferate rot in the body. So if we want to become rot-free and incorruptible, that's what we want to do. We want to remove the accumulation of rot and the waste that would continue to create rot, fermentation and putrefaction. And then we want to make sure that whatever goes into the body after that is as least inclined to rot as possible. So that's the teeth. Oh, and with regard to nails, the toxic nail polish. I know, guys, I know it's hard because it's a lot of you just love having your nails done. You love fabulous nails. There is natural nail polish on the market. I haven't used it because I haven't polished anything in a very long time. But occasionally I do like to polish my toes, even though I actually haven't polished my nails. I'll show you guys my hands. They're very simple. They're like working mama hands. I keep my nails. I'm not saying that you need to do this, but I just keep my nails short, and I don't have any issues with my nail beds. I didn't think I was going to show you my hands today, but I think the cuticles, everything's natural. The cuticle beds are healthy. My hands aren't showing. I don't think they're showing signs of age. Even though I'm in the sun a lot, because again, when the waste is leaving, and there's no rot and no dehydration, the skin isn't going to have these sort of showings of decay. And decay, of course, the intense wrinkling is coming from that deep dehydration in the gut. So we clean that out. Don't let people fuss with your nail beds, and remember that all the heavy metals. There's so much to cover, guys. I don't know what I was thinking. There's all the heavy metals in the nail products. They're so bad, and they do seep through, and they get into through the nails into the tissue. They go into your bloodstream. You're breathing them. We have to help each other by seeing ways. And it's also a waste of time and a waste of money. Again, I'm not going to tell you what to do with your nails, but I'm going to tell you what I do and why I'm so happy that I mean, the better part of 20 years, I can't remember when I've gone for a manicure. But you have to go through that time of having your hands restore. And if you go for regular manicures, it may take a few months, it may take longer, but it will come back. And your value, your wealth is in your health. So if you're going to destroy that because you want to have pretty nails, that's a high price to pay. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it, but what I do want to say is that everything has a price. So figure out what you're doing, what the price is, and then bring that price down somehow, some way in your life. So if you're doing a whole bunch of things, whether you're coloring your hair, and I still do get highlights and lowlights about twice a year, because I just like it, and I feel like it's my way of blending my grays. So I don't mind having a little bit of gray now, but I'm not ready to go whole hog. So I just have this one little area, and I like to blend in the grays anyway. So that's my thing, and that weakens the hair. But I do it consciously. I'm aware of it, and there is a different method that I would do if I had access to it. It's called hair print. It's easily accessible in America. It's just difficult here. There's only one place that does it, and they're out of stock. But hair print is totally natural, so you can look that up. And so figure out what it is that you really have to keep and hang on to for now because you're not ready to let it go. Figure out what the price is, and then figure out what you are ready to let go of, and be generous with yourself. Get rid of as many things as you can. Restrictive clothing that makes you miserable. Maybe it's time to get out of using perfume. It's one of the most toxic things in the world. Use essential oils. I was going to tell you about the cinnamon oil. The cinnamon oil, just very, very quickly, will kill all the pathogens in your mouth, and then it will trickle down your throat, killing anything that could be in your throat, like that could cause sore throat or, flu or COVID. I don't know. Very good prevention against COVID. And then it will trickle down into your gut and kill any pathogens that it meets there. So the cinnamon oil is great. I also love peppermint oil, essential oil of peppermint, for the same reason. So with both of them, you just use a tiny bit. So what's interesting about the peppermint versus the cinnamon is peppermint is extremely cooling. So I just bring it right to my tongue. Have your own. You're not going to share this with the whole house. Have your own. Have it in a few places. The peppermint is they're both so good for pre-workout, because actually during the workout too, you just have it, take a little bit, it super stimulates you, and it makes you feel clean and energetic immediately. I also liked when I was working on and then same thing with the cinnamon. You just literally want to take your tongue just to the tippy top of it, because it's so strong. You want to get almost less than a drop. Do not pour. But should you wind up taking too much of this by accident, you will feel like you're on fire for about 30 seconds, and then it will stop completely. So don't panic, and never try to dilute an oil with water. The essential oils will only go deeper into the tissue with water. So whether you get it on your skin, some oils work beautifully in the mouth, but on the skin they'll burn. Like the cinnamon oil won't burn in the mouth, but it will burn on the skin. Peppermint is very, very cooling. So it's the queen of pain. If you have aches and pains, put the peppermint oil on, but don't put too much because it will be too cold. It will actually make you cold. But it's brilliant. These things are just so brilliant. But for fragrance, you might just think about using an essential oil, or in your face balms. Here we go. I definitely have to jump, you guys. But I just want to show you, this is what I'll use. This is what I use on my skin every day, multiple times a day. It's Africology body balm, but it's like face and body balm, and it's made from its base is grapeseed oil, and it has beeswax, and then and shea butter, and then just essential oils. And this one is the geranium, and you can get these online, by the way. They're not expensive. I get them here so easily because they're made here. But what you just really want is a good hydrating balm. I don't like creams. I feel like creams don't actually hydrate the skin properly. But oils and balms, and then let your fragrance be in that, so it's more subtle, and definitely got to get away from the perfumes. Okay. Remember, the frequency of truth cures programming, and we're here to make you strong. All right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. It's wonderful to get to share all this with you, and we can always do a part 2 another time. It's a big subject. I'm sorry I have to jump. Have the best day wherever in the world you are. So much love. Bye for now.